everybody. First of all, I got to say I've been amazed with the response that I've had in preparation for this interview. I asked the people on my beginning BJJ online course and my grappling tips newsletters whether they had any questions for Erik. And within 5 minutes, I was just flooded with emails. In the past few days, I've received 200 or 300 emails and 500 or 600 questions. So my apologies if I don't get your specific question answered. I'm going to try my best, but it's just not going to work out. The good news is that Erik does travel all over the world doing seminars, and as you'll see, he's very friendly and approachable. So if your questions didn't get answered, then hopefully you can get to a seminar where not only you'll learn lots, and I can't recommend his seminars highly enough, but also you get a chance to ask him whatever your questions are. So, hey, Erik, how's it going?
I'm great, Stefan. How are you? Happy holidays, guys.
Oh, thanks. We should mention that we're recording this shortly before Christmas. Erik, you are one of my main grappling influences. Somebody I know describes you like Neo at the end of the Matrix, where you see everything everywhere. But instead of me talking about you, why don't you tell us a little bit? I mean, your MMA or your grappling system is called combat submission wrestling. So why don't you talk about a little bit about what the primary influences are, the systems that make up the bulk of your system, and then what some of the more minor influences in CSW are and have been.
Okay. Well, CSW was, I didn't ever try to create my own organization, my own system. What happened is I was going to Japan fighting in Shooto, and I was training in jiu-jitsu and judo, and I had different coaches in all different aspects of grappling, and what I want to do is combine things. I was told that I couldn't teach this, I couldn't teach that. Even when I got ranking in certain arts, I still wasn't allowed to really teach or show stuff. So what I did is I went to Japan, and they had something called combat wrestling. And basically it was catch wrestling mixed with wrestling, and they had a whole point system, and they had tournaments, and it was all no-gi. So, people couldn't really associate it with jiu-jitsu. It was in the realms of wrestling with submissions. So that's why I came up with the combat submission wrestling. The combat side of it was the fact that we fight too. We're an MMA-based system. So all the grappling that I teach is primarily for fighting. So you'll notice a lot of the stuff we do has a heavy wrestling base for scrambles, top control, how to get out of the bottom, how to get on top. For MMA, you want to be on top as much as you can.
And when you say wrestling, you mean like American wrestling?
Yeah, folk style, freestyle, folk style, Greco. And our objective is to combine. So if someone said, hey, what is CSW? What's the difference? I said it's where jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and catch wrestling shakes hands because it's blended. It's blended. The submissions are blended. The positioning, the movements are blended. So if you take, say, for instance, I trained with Hickson for 4 years in his garage. I trained with Hoist and Horian in the garage for 3 years. And before I was ever kicked out of one of the gyms, I also I ended up going to the Machados, to Higgin and the brothers, because they were cool about stuff, about the politics and stuff, where the other guys were like, you can't do both. And I'm like, I just want to fight and I want to learn jiu-jitsu. What's wrong with that? I mean, today there's no problem, but back then apparently there was. So
when you say both, you mean shoot wrestling under Yuri Nakamura?
Yes, I was fighting in Japan in Shooto, and then I was taking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes with a gi. I started Jiu-Jitsu in 1986 under Horian and Hoist in their garage. And then I met Hickson in 1989 and 1990. I started under him because I wanted to learn more of just straight ground. I didn't want to learn the Gracies self-defense system anymore. I wanted to learn just strictly the ground stuff without having to learn the self-defense stuff. So I had 3 years with Hoist and Horian with all the self-defense, I think some of the combative stuff that they do today. I'm glad that I did that. A lot of people never got that. And so for this day, still to this day, I still teach that as part of the self-defense portion of what I teach, and also to the police and the military. A lot of the self-defense stuff that's combined along with the Inasano, the Kali, Silat, Wing Chun, and I think it's a good blend of stuff. I think it's blended really well. Obviously, those guys are masters at the self-defense portion of the jiu-jitsu, which to me, when I saw them actually do it, I was pretty impressed with it. Anyways, so Hickson had an older brother who was really, really great, and he was supposed to be one of the best of all of them in competitions and the toughest of all of them. But if you look at his background, he wrestled and did Sambo also. So I think it was the combination of adding that to...
By that, you're referring to Halls.
Halls, yes, who died in a hang gliding accident. So to see the fact that, he was, they said he was the best, but the reason I believe that is because he, obviously, was a great athlete, because he was actually good at everything that he did. But on top of that, I think the combination of the wrestling, understanding probably the Leglocks from Sambo, and obviously the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu combination made him a very formidable, tough opponent for anybody. So I had trained with Hickson for 4 years. There was a guy, Mark Eckhart. I hadn't trained with Mark for years. He came back out of the woodwork, came down. Mark was one of Hickson's best guys. He excelled faster than everybody at the school. So I hadn't grappled with Mark for years, and he came down. I said, Mark, can we grapple? And he goes, yeah, sure. We haven't grappled for a while, so we started rolling. And he started doing some stuff, and I watched him roll with a couple other guys too. But when I was rolling with him, I go, hey, Mark, did you wrestle in high school? He goes, no. And I go, Keep moving. We started moving. He did a few other things. I go, where did you get that? He goes, Hickson. I go, that's wrestling based, not just jiu-jitsu, but there's wrestling mixed in with it, with what he was doing. Now, I know they say it's authentic 100%, but you know what? I saw Hickson go with wrestlers and stuff. They learn wrestling. He learned wrestling, but that's part of his jiu-jitsu. And obviously, I believe that Hickson's jiu-jitsu is very, very strong. And so I saw that, and I'll tell you, some of the toughest guys I ever went against were all wrestlers, just because of the mentality, the mindset. They're taught to go 150% to be in the best.
Name drop? Could you give us some examples?
Rico Cifarelli, Paul Jones, Marty Morgan, Cole Conrad, Chris Tutcher, John Madsen, Brock Lesnar. Josh had a wrestling background also, Babalu Sobral. A lot of these guys have wrestling backgrounds, and I believe that it helps make you stronger. And on the takedown, it also helps you in scrambling situations, how to scramble out of stuff, not to jump on your back, but make someone try to put you on your back, and then keep getting up. And the ability that if you get a guy that does that to you, you have the ability to take someone's back and choke them. That's another thing, because you know, you need both games. You need the top game. You need the bottom game. And obviously, if you're going to go with someone who's a better wrestler than you, you're going to be on your back or your side. So you really have to address the half guard, side half guard, flat half guard, guard, active guard, butterfly guard, sit-up guard, whatever you want to call it, stretch guard. Those all have to be implemented into your game. But I think a combo of the two is a strong mixture and great for fighting. Look at Carlson. Carlson's a top game guy. You're actually a Carlson descendant through Marco Suarez, who is a black belt under Carlson, and yeah. Carlson fought. And if you look at most of the guys that he trained, they were all top guys, top game guys. Not that they weren't good on their back, but you look at like Mario Sperry, Bustamante, Vitor Belfort, his game was more of a top style game. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyways, it's more than anything. I think it's a style than just an art. And you know, I think the older you get, the more you have to play off your back, because it's easier to roll with people and work your defense and stuff. But the problem is the older you get, you also don't want to have big, heavy, strong guys laying on you all the time. So I think the side half guard is, something that you want to work.
When you say side half guard, just so that we're talking the same language, what do you mean?
Side half guard means one, you can either put the shin in like a scissor side half guard, or a half guard when you're on your side with an underhook.
Okay.
So the side half guard is...
You're not flat on your back?
No, the flat... It's a lot harder to do stuff when you're flat. You have to get on your side so you can do all your sweeps and get outs and attacks, and that's a lot better, I think. So, well, that's a new game that all of the newer guys do. You take like old jiu-jitsu, they say jiu-jitsu should fit in the palm of your hands, meaning you have to be strong at the jiu-jitsu wheel, and the wheel is based on 4 basic positions. It was the guard, the mount, side control, and back control. And so I was with Higgin, and I said, okay, so knee on belly, he goes side control. I go, okay. Keizagatame, he goes side control. North and south still falls into the realm of side control because it's part of the transition sequence. Back control, you're on their back. They're face up, they're face down, you're on their back. And obviously the mount and guard. That's it. That's the 4 parts of that. Now, with the Japanese mentality, those would be your primary positions would be mount, side control, guard, kneeling, starting on your knees, and also they sprawled, you're on your knees underneath them, or you're on top. And back control. Those are your 5 basics. Just fits in the palm of your hand. So kneeling, mount, side control, guard, back control. So those are primary. Secondary, which now for a lot of people are their primaries. Secondary, half guard, or side half guard, butterfly guard. All the guards that are open guard fall into that category. Then you have north and south. Then you have knee on belly or shin on belly, Keiza or Kazuri Keizagatame. And again, like I said, the open guard sequence. Those are your secondary positions, or lower body control, which is synonymous in Japan. So that's the secondary positions that we work. Primary being the basic and mastering the basics. How to pull guard, how do you go to your knees, how to take someone's back. And then secondary, obviously, going into your half guard, working your sweep, taking their back. Games are different, but I believe you need to know both. I think you should know both of those, and I think it's important to have both of those.
When you say both, you mean the sort of Japanese approach?
The primary game, which is the 5 basics, and the secondary. That's why I created a level 1, coach level 1 in the CSW is the 5 basics, the 5 basic positions, and then in the next 5, we get you to coach level 2, which is purple brown belt level. The first will be high blue, low purple belt level. Then we have 7 throws for level 1, 7 takedowns, and then level 2 is another 5 takedowns. So I think you need to do all that. And then you got to wrestle, you got to do takedowns, you got to do submissions, you have to do get-outs, attacks, defense, and then also Iron Man or the gauntlet. You got to get thrown in the middle and then let people come after you. You should roll for 40 straight minutes, one guy after another, just to get your conditioning up and get used to like really going for it. That way you set your mind for competition. Just one after another, boom, 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 for 40 straight minutes.
Well, just where I was going with my question earlier is...
What is CSW?
No, well, sort of. You're saying it's where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and catch wrestling shake hands. So can you talk a little bit... We've talked a little bit about the Jiu-Jitsu end of things, getting started with Boyce or Horian in the garage and then moving on to Hickson. And could you talk a little bit more about the catch wrestling, including the English style catch wrestling that I know you've had some exposure to recently, sort of American catch wrestling, and I guess Japanese catch wrestling as well by by a Shooto. What's the difference, as you see it, between the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu mentality and the catch wrestling mentality?
Catch wrestling, the way the catch is taught, especially like in Japan, it's turbo submissions. It's like submissions on steroids. The reason it was presented in an attack mentality from Shooto was because of the fact that you only had 15 seconds when you hit the ground to submit your guy. So you're going balls out for submissions. You're not going to position and hold a guy. Ooh, I got a good position. I'm going to hold him. I'm going to hold him to death. No. Your objective was to take him down and submit him as fast as you could. So you're like, as soon as you hit the ground, bing, you're going for submissions. And that's the way it should be anyways. It shouldn't be a holding contest. It should be you're fighting, trying to submit your partner. Because there's so many different submissions. It needs to be set up where people are, you don't want to win by points and by position. Okay, I'll position you. I won on advantage. I held you longer. I took you down and I just held you and I won. Yeah, I won. Great. Did you submit the guy? No, I held him to death. No. Submit your guy. Go after the submission. Should be based on submission. And if you have a knowledge on the skill and many submissions, you should be able to attack people a lot faster. Every submission is an increment away from each other. So every 1 second or 2 seconds, you should be able to submit somebody, like boom, 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 when you're going for submission. It should be like a semi-automatic or automatic machine gun. That's the mentality. So with that mentality, it's an attack mentality, which is completely different than the slow, take your time, enjoy yourself mentality because of the fighting factor. And with that mentality, Japanese were very creative with a lot of different submissions, combining the way they got into them, their sequence. I mean, even to this day, if you look at some of the guys like Gomi,
Imanari, Asahi from Shooto, just like submission masters that just have so many like weird different ways that they get into it. It's like they're very, very creative, but they also have a very strong wrestling base. So they can wrestle. If they're in trouble, they can wrestle out of a situation. But they're on the mat so much that everything's combined. It's not. There's really no difference. Someone says, "Oh, he's strictly jiu-jitsu." Well, it's all mixed because it's all part of it. You have to wrestle. You have to go for takedowns. You have to go for positioning, and then you have to go for submissions. And the key is conditioning. That's why conditioning is like a really big factor for catch wrestling. That's why they use the Hindu squats, the slider push-ups, the V-ups, all the slat board push-ups. The biggest thing that catch wrestling, I believe they really focus on is the conditioning factor. Obviously, with the top-level guys today in jiu-jitsu, it's the same thing. Their conditioning is key. Look at the top guys. Their conditioning is spectacular. So they all fall into the same category. They're converged.
Yeah. It's competition. So as far as like the attack sequences, we do a lot of neck cranks, ankle locks, wrist locks, just tweak different locks. And again, they're based on lock flow sequences, which, I've gotten some people say, oh, that's bullshit, but, it's really not, because wherever that arm is and what angle or position it's in, you should be able to get a submission on it. So that's a whole difference, I think. Positioning, control, escapes, transitions, and then attacks. Just your ability to grab something and go for it, and transition whenever something comes out, boom, you take it.
It seems to me that watching the early Shooto, when you were competing a lot, that there was, you could see that machine gun submission attack, but the whole ground and pound thing hadn't been
developed because it wasn't allowed yet. That wasn't allowed. We weren't even, when I first started fighting in Japan, we weren't even allowed to punch face on the ground. So guys you get mount on the guy and he put his arms under his back because he didn't want to get submitted. And you'd sitting there going, Well, I can't punch your face, so I got to try to get his arm out.
But that changed by the end of your...
Tie, break, stand. And you're like, oh, I'm back up to striking again. So they changed the rules because there weren't very many guys that could actually fight in the Shooto and do really well because you had to be well-versed in striking, well-versed in grappling, well-versed in submissions. You had to have takedowns, you had to have good striking, you had to have good ground. That was like the epitome of a shooter.
Did the introduction of ground and pound, I mean, I'm guessing I know what the answer is, but how did the introduction of a ground and pound aspect, once the rules changed, change Shooto? Was there a lot of resistance to that?
Well, basically Satoru Sayama said, hey, we're going to start adding, because Vale Tudo's getting very big from Brazil, so we're going to take their rules and we're going to start going for striking. And everyone's like, So without even asking anybody, he just changed the rules and started adding striking. And the reason he did that is so more people could fight in Japan. He wanted all these guys to be able to fight from all these different countries. So the 5 3-minute rounds turned into 3 5-minute rounds, and when they hit the ground, they actually allowed them to stay on the ground. So they worked a lot more just straight submissions. So it changed a lot. You know, that's where things changed a lot. I thought the old style was a little more exciting if they would have had ground and pound too, because it was more of a spectator sport. You have 15 seconds on the ground to pound it out of somebody or get a submission, and if you didn't, you're back up to your feet striking and grappling.
It's funny to go back to your handshake comment originally, because I remember watching the early Shooto, and they were always matching up some Brazilian fighter against some Japanese fighter. And
the reason they did that was because they respected jiu-jitsu, which was the strongest ground game out there. So they tried to bring in any top jiu-jitsu guy so they could beat them, to prove that they were as strong as jiu-jitsu, or each fighter was as strong as their top fighter. That was their mentality.
Well, it seemed that if the way those matches would often go is the Japanese guy would go for some flying heel hook, and if he got it, the fight would be over, and if he didn't get it, he'd give up his back, and the Brazilian guy would get the rear naked choke and choke him out from the back.
A little different, but if you look at today, most of the guys that are fighting in MMA are very well versed at jiu-jitsu and submission, like catch style, and good hands now too, with good takedowns. The funny thing is I got accused of teaching the Japanese jiu-jitsu. They're like, Erik Paulson's teaching them jiu-jitsu, Gracie jiu-jitsu. I said, why would I teach them when I'm using them over there to beat them? It's stupid. I go, that's a wrong or a false accusation, and I'm not going to show them what I use because it was new to them. They didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
So the positioning and the sweeping and taking the back was not so popular to them. So with the positioning thing, I had the advantage because they had never seen it. But they were trying to accuse me of teaching the Japanese, and I'm like, why would I teach the guys that impose a challenge to me every time I go over there? Why would I teach them what I'm going to use to beat them? I didn't like that so much.
Well, we've sort of been talking about evolution of MMA. You're heavily tied in with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu scene in Southern California as well. You're associated with Higan Machado, and a lot of the top Jiu-Jitsu guys do come and train with you. So where do you see just Jiu-Jitsu evolving to in, say, the next 10 years? You see offshoots like the 10th Planet guys and people, developing all kinds of new guards. And so where do you see that evolving to?
Well, it's constantly changing it's evolving through competition. The no-gi is huge. A lot of the guys, for tradition, they wear the gi, but I said 10 years ago, because guys said, why do you take your gi off? Why do you roll without a gi? Why don't you put a gi back on? I said, because you will all, mark my word, you will all take your gi off. Because you'll all want to make money, and there's no money wearing a gi unless you're fighting in a main event and you're going to get $1,000, $2,000, or you're promoting fights or competition. I said there's money in no gi because of Abu Dhabi, and you all want to be a champion in that. And in MMA, you're not going to be wearing any type of jacket. So you're going to be rolling most of the time without a gi and training with gloves on. So, why not take it off? So I did both. I mean, I really, because I did judo for a while too, I really like the fact that I like it. It's a slower game, and for me it's a lot more fun because you have more options with the gi. And the older you get, it's more fun. The only problem living in Orange County is it's hot a lot of times, so actually convincing my students to keep the gi on. Like I have 2 jiu-jitsu classes a week, and guys don't bring their gis. I actually had 4 gi classes a week, which turned to 2, which now I'm trying to, guys say, do we have a jiu-jitsu class? I go, well, apparently nobody's bringing their gis, so now classes, it's without a gi. But primarily in that class, we do a lot of stuff off our back. It's all your sweeps, all the guard passes, attacks, half butterfly, sit-up guard. A little different. In the other classes, the CSW or the catch classes, it's primarily a lot of takedowns, a lot of wrestling from your knees, and then submissions. The jiu-jitsu classes, get on your back as fast as you can and then try to work your sweep or get out and try to submit guys off your back.
So then where do you fall on that whole argument of working with the gi helps your no-gi game versus...
I agree with that because it gives you options. And the second you take the gi off, you get the handles change. You have to use hooks instead of handles. So if you can transition from a hook to a handle, and I was talking to a couple guys, and they said if you were to take any no-gi tournament, most of the guys that did volley judo never win. Most of the guys that were actually winning all competitions all were a jiu-jitsu gi-based training, and then they took their gi off, and then they fought no-gi, and they all did really well. I had arguments with Josh about it. Josh Barnett.
That'd be Josh Barnett.
Yeah, but Josh said, I disagree, and I go, well, name only wrestlers that are going out there and beating tons of guys with submissions and stuff. There's only a select few.
Well, Josh is almost the other extreme, having trained mostly no-gi and now having put the gi on for a couple of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments.
I told him, I said, here's your deal. I go, you're good at positioning, you're good at wrestling, you're big, you're strong, you got strong hips, you got heavy legs, and you're good at the leg attacks. When you fight at black belt division, legs are legal. So go out there, pretend you don't have a gi on. Don't try to use anything that has to do with the gi. Just kill all the grips, and then just do all your submissions you normally do. And he listened, and he actually did really well. So now it's funny because now he actually comes in and brings his gi in, and when guys don't have their gi, he grapes and moans. So his new nickname is Jiu-Jitsu Josh. Because he came from Pancrase, and there's a lot of BJJ haters over there because they didn't like to compete against the, as I said, the top guys were the jiu-jitsu guys, and so they always wanted to beat them, so everyone was anti-jiu-jitsu, whereas I was like, well, if everyone wants to beat it so bad, it's got to be really great, because otherwise it wouldn't be a formidable opponent, and they wouldn't even talk about it. So I was told right off the bat through Dan Inosanto and Larry Hartzell and Tim Tackett, and they said, go train with the best guys, and there's some Brazilians that are spectacular on the ground. Go train with these guys.
So that's how you hooked up with these bunch of strange, skinny South American guys in a garage.
Well, yeah, with Horian. Horian was my first teacher. It was wonderful. He hooked me. I thought I was going to get my ass kicked, and next thing you know, he made me feel like $1 million. He gave me a hug and said, I'll see you next time. And I was like, man, that was great. Wow, I've never felt so good after a private lesson. And I thought, well, how can you be learning such a strong system? And the guys are actually so nice. And it was just that whole Brazilian mentality is what kind of got me hooked. Was they actually, they always give you a hug, and whereas Japanese just bow and Americans just high five or whatever, give you the high five and the bro buddy handshake.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get back to, we sort of went towards Leglocks for a second, and to a lot of the people listening, I think that Erik has had a huge influence on the Brazilian jiu-jitsu scene in California, at least partially by opening the eyes of a lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners to Leglocks. And for people who've been doing jiu-jitsu as long as Erik or myself, we remember the days when, I think, Erik, in your first jiu-jitsu tournament, or one of the jiu-jitsu tournaments, you got booed for winning your division with Leglocks. These things used to be like low-class techniques.
Yeah. Now there's guys that's like look at Polaris, who fights in the UFC. That's his number one game. He's a leg lock guy. He rips the legs off of everybody almost. And Higgin came out with an encyclopedia of leg locks in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's non-existent, if it's not like their primary game, then why are there books out on it now?
Well, what about in MMA? What about the argument that if you go for leg locks in MMA, you're giving up superior position for what is sometimes a low percentage?
What I say to my guys is that you don't go for leg locks. Don't go for leg locks until second round, when the guy's a little tired, because you spend a lot of energy going for it, and if you lose it, the guy's still got a lot of energy, and leg locks are easier to go for, I believe, when the guy's a lot more tired.
Okay. And what about the safety out? That's the other thing, is the one traditional argument that we've all heard a million times is don't go for leg locks, you give up good position. The other argument is don't go for leg locks, they're dangerous, especially for your opponent. So what are sort of some safety concepts to keep in mind when you are training leg locks or using them in competition? We
acknowledge that if you get a heel, that a heel is kind of the end of the. If someone's got your leg, they're twisting your heel up, tap.
You mean a heel hook or a toe hold, for example?
Heel hook.
Okay.
So if someone puts a heel hook on you and it's on, don't sit here and try to. Obviously, you're going to always try to roll out of it, but we acknowledge it. We always acknowledge it and just tap the guy and keep moving, instead of one guy catching it and the other guy not tapping and the other guy rips it. And he's like, hey, your knee just popped. Sorry, you got 6 months out off the mat now. So we acknowledge it a lot easier. Toe hold, same thing. I tell guys right off the bat, I go, you don't want to walk crooked for a month or 2 months. I go, if someone snaps a toe hold on, just tap. It's no big deal. If it's in a competition, fight. But, if it's almost on in class, don't sit and fight, because your ankle's going to snap.
And what if you had one of your students who was, say a decent wrestler, decent striker, jiu-jitsu background, was going against some crazy leg locker, some guy whose emphasis was leg lock? What advice would you give to your students on defending?
Always keep your legs tight to your chest. Always keep your legs close, and always know where your legs are at all times. So if you're going for a leg lock on the other guy, make sure your legs are hidden. Make sure your feet are hidden. Don't leave your legs dangling out. Also, when you're in the guard, keep your feet on the guy's hips. Don't let your leg dangle off to the side.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is your legs are tight to your chest, and it's a lot harder for him to pull your leg out. Once that leg goes 90 degrees or beyond, it's easier for him to snag a leg.
Okay. And the leg locks in your system, they're would you say it's all comes from the Japanese catchwrestling and by the sambo?
It's really changed. Even my leg lock game's changed a lot. When I learned the toe holds, all the toe holds from I got the toe holds from Omar Buish. Mm-hmm. He went over to Japan and was fighting in Pancrase, and he learned the toe holds from Funaki and a lot of the guys at the Pancrase gym, and he came back and he started doing toe holds, and I remember just grabbing my feet and just trying to twist the shit out of my ankles, and I was like, I gotta learn that, because in Shooto we never did toe holds. And it's funny because Josh came and he loves the toe hold. It's like his favorite move, but it came from Matt,
and that came from Pancrase. So those guys like the toe holds. Shooto guys are notorious for the heel hook, and they're also notorious for the knee bars. So I changed a lot. My attacks are a little different, a little safer, and I have a few that I go to, but I don't go for all these different variations of them. I have like maybe a favorite, maybe 3 to 5 that I do, and if I'm not in a position to go for it, I'm not going to go for it. And the other thing is I don't go balls out after them, and if I lose it, I can retransition back up and stay in a healthy game rather than sacrifice 100% my position to lose everything for that one chance to catch that foot.
So is it, I'm just having observed you as sort of as a friend and as a teacher over the last, I guess, 13 years. God, that's a long time. Is it fair to say that you've sort of, despite you've continued learning, that you've sort of narrowed the amount of techniques that you do?
Yeah, I have, because of the fact, first of all, I'm older. My body style is different. I don't have the body like a ferret or a mongoose anymore. I'm more like a ogre, and a lot of my submission is based on my weight. So I have more of a Higgins style game today than I did when I was younger, because I could move a lot. I was still doing gymnastics all the time. I could move. I could still move, but I think the older you get, the harder it is to start moving like you used to. But also I think the fact that a lot of guys I go against now, they're a lot better wrestlers than I'd ever dealt with before. I get guys that are good at jiu-jitsu, but I think the wrestlers are the guys, because they out-scramble and they get back on top, and then you got to reset and keep re-attacking and changing the angles. And, I think the level of wrestling has really changed a lot. So your game has to change. I have a few go-tos that I really like that I use all the time, as opposed to the plethora of moves I used to try to do. Now I only have like a select handful that I use regularly.
For your own game, but you'll show different people, different stuff.
Yeah, because everyone's body's different. Everyone's body's not like mine. So if I only show them the 5 moves that I use, that would be cheating them out of the ones that they could actually pull off.
Right.
So, it depends. Like if I got a fighter, I find his best move, and then we just put 2 more with that, and that's his game. So he's got one go-to primary attack, and then he's got a secondary and tertiary attack that back those up in case the other 2 don't work. I think locks should always be attacked in succession, and there should always be a backup plan. And I think that's important. But as a teacher, you want to teach guys.
Could you give us an example of that, of somebody you've trained who had if you can do it without compromising their ability to fight, or you can even just go hypothetical on us?
Your side control, you step over their head, and then they push your leg off the head, and then you go back to a shoulder triangle. And that shoulder triangle, a lot of guys will kind of turn in to create space, so you can't really get them flat. So if you just hip skid across their body, now you're on the other side with a triangle, you can actually just lift up and put all your body weight on it. It's a lot easier to catch people. Another thing is, depending upon what, but like I do a lot of the chokes from like the anaconda sequence. Go for the anaconda, and they'll always pull back. So I have like sequences of go for the anaconda, they'll start to pull their arm out. So you go for the gravet, which is a figure 4 neck crank. If they pull their arm back real hard, you go to just a standard figure 4 choke on their neck, pushing the shoulder. And then if they pull their arm up real high, back high and hard because you're really trying to pull it down, then you go for the cow catcher to the mounted reverse guillotine. And if you get it all the way across, you put your head under their armpit, then you have the Dave Schultz choke, the one that Matt Hughes used on Big Dog.
Well, with any luck, I'm going to be seeing you in February, Erik, and I'll take you aside, even if it has to be in the hotel lobby, and we'll film these 2 sequences I'll put them up so that people have an idea. So I don't get a million emails of people asking me.
Well, if you look at, like, when you're pulling the guy's arm across, like, I call it the Bakersfield because I had a wrestler from Bakersfield come down and headlock everybody. And I said, what's Bakersfield notorious for? The guy goes, they're notorious for their headlocks. They're really good at headlocking guys. So he brings his wrist down to the guy's elbow bone, and he pulls the arm across, so he really gets that shoulder triangle. And then he gets the wedge, and then he does the quick kill. He falls on his side instead of the alligator roll. I know Dennis likes the alligator roll, where you dive all the way under. But if you sprawl, keep your knees wide, it's hard for him to dive all the way under. But he could still possibly tighten it up. That is a counter. So you go the other way, you just fall the other way and just walk your hips in. And you can finish your anaconda that way, which turns into, well, almost like a Dars. Then when they pull their elbow back, you immediately snap on the front choke. Just let the arm go and snap on the front choke. Push your shoulder. If he brings it back a little farther, then you grab his tricep and you got to grab it, which is the figure 4 neck crank. When his arm comes all the way back like he's going to reach over, that's when you go for the cow catcher. And then you just, when you do the cow catcher, you have the neck crank sit out, but then you tripod, put your head down, and you do a guillotine from a tripod, and then you windshield wiper your leg and step over in the mount, and you twist their head sideways in the guillotine neck crank. Those are sequences that I like to use for setups.
Okay. Well, we're going to film this, and by the way, he was talking about Dennis Kang, who's a friend of both of ours there, and an MMA fighter. All right. So now a lot of people ask me, I'm trying to actually go through some of the questions that people had. What do you have for tips against going against an opponent that's bigger than you in size or in strength? What are some, like, easy to execute techniques against a bigger, stronger, heavier opponent?
Well, first thing is really hand fight hard. Don't let them just, like, snag your head, snap you down, and then go. Try to hand fight him as much as you can. Use your head control in the socket. And if you got to go to your back, try to snag a leg in and get to your side half guard. And then once you get the side half guard, try to gain that underhook as high as you can or as low as you can. Lock down his leg if you can. Slide down to his hip, and then try the Eddie calls it the old school. Try the old school choke, or stay high and try to take the back. A lot of guys whizzer so you can roll under them, and try to get under that other leg. Try to find out where the guy's weak, or give him a position, let him get side control, and then give him the V arm lock, give him the Americana, and then when he goes for it, you Y escape out. Just push his shoulder and stiff arm, like call it Y escape out, or give him something and then try to reverse them. A lot of times, even if they're mounted, let them go for a V arm lock, and when they go for the V arm lock, then really take your arm and straighten it out so he's really off center line, and then Y escape out and come up and pass a guard or take his leg. Another thing is give him your back. You go and give him your arm. Let him go for an arm lock, and as soon as he steps over, sit up, and then pass his guard. Go on top.
Okay. Well, I guess even though you're now a self-proclaimed ogre, I know you've been pretty heavily involved in coaching Brock Lesnar, so that would have put you on the smaller, weaker, lighter end of things. What was that like, just training with somebody that large?
Brock's a monster, and he's got guys that are there for every part of the game. So my part changed with them throughout the years that I've been with them. Started out a lot of wall stuff. Greg was in charge of the striking. I did a lot of the submission, the catch stuff, which he really liked. I mean, he was learning the game. Then he kind of had to figure out what his best things were, best moves were, some of the things, the go-tos that he had that he really liked. And then Caprito came in and rolled with him regularly, and he got to go with all his wrestlers. And then what happened is he kind of figured out his game from rolling with Caprito so much. He figured out, a few things, and Caprito is super good at problem solving and comes up with really good strategies. So I mean, everyone works really good together as a team. Going underneath those guys, you're on top for a few seconds, and then you're underneath them. And it sucks. They're strong. And for me, I try not to steal my back because they can just smash you. It's hard to breathe, and I don't want to tap out because I can't breathe. That's kind of embarrassing. So I always try to get to my knees or get to my side and try to get up and do the fat man roll. And the thing is, when I get up, it's hard because you got these guys that keep driving you down and grinding you down and always on your neck. So when you're done rolling, your neck hurts and your hips hurt from going to your knees the whole time.
Would you care to comment on his last fight against Cain Velasquez, on what went right, what went wrong, and how you're going to...
No, he did everything we planned on. We did everything he planned on doing in the first 30 seconds. We thought it was going to be a fight. But he did everything, almost everything we planned on doing. He did it all the things that we worked on in the first 30 seconds. So that's about it. It was his choice with his game plan, because we kind of had a game plan set, and we watched tons of tapes. We knew what Cain was good at, but Cain really kept his composure and implemented his game as good as he could. So, that's really all I could say about it. I wouldn't say anything else. I could tell you that Brock was in the shape of his life. He trained super duper hard. I mean, he was in unbelievable shape. And even the guys that were in good shape, he was in way better shape. He was running faster. All of the stuff that he was doing was just go flying through it. So, it just I think it had to do with a little bit of experience there.
Well, what is obviously you get flown in, and Comprito and all these wrestlers get flown in for the actual training camp. But do you see him in the sort of the off season or between fights, or just for the camps?
Oh, he has other things he does. Right now, obviously, because it's wintertime, he loves to hunt and fish. So he likes a private life, and nobody's really allowed to say much about what he does mini camps. He has little things that he does, but he's always doing something active or athletic. Farming still is athletic. Look at Matt Hughes.
Mm-hmm. Well, in terms of athleticism and staying active, obviously you've said earlier you're a huge believer in conditioning. Would you have, what are the best off the mat activities to help with grappling in particular? Would it be gymnastics or swimming?
And gymnastics and mountain climbing. If you want to rock climbing makes you cock strong. Gymnastics makes you cock strong. Swimming just makes your whole body. Swimming's equivalent to grappling. And I like to do more powerlifting in the off season because it allows you to get stronger. You don't have to lift as light and a lot of reps, but you actually do some really heavy, shorter, faster reps, and you're in and out of the gym quicker. But it's harder on your body because you're using super duper heavy weight, and it's really fast.
Can you give us an example of a day in the gym if you're doing your powerlifting circuit?
Start with deadlifts. You start with deadlifts, and then you go hanging power cleans. And then you might throw one set of squats in there, heavy 1 or 2 sets of squats, and then some incline presses and then pull-ups. And you probably hit 2 to 3 sets of each. And
how long are you resting between sets there? You're not doing it as a circuit, are you?
Yeah, I try to run. I try to run through stuff so you're actually tweaking your heart and your lungs while you're doing it. I'm not the type of guy that goes to a gym and sits and talks to people. And I like to put a set of headphones on and just go crazy and get in and get out, kick your own butt.
Would your advice change as we start getting into grapplers who are 40 and over, who want to, get in shape and stay strong, but obviously don't want to get injured?
Yeah, what I do then is I go and I do legs. I'll do leg extensions. I superset everything, so I'll go leg extensions and hamstring curls, and then calves. Leg extension, hamstring curls, and calves, and I just hit those as fast and hard as I can. I'll do 2 sets of each, heavy and fast, and then I'll go to my next set would be incline press, shoulders, and usually shoulders, arms, and incline, and superset them. And then I end up usually doing life cycle, or the some type of...
That's where you're cycling and moving with your arms as well.
The arm bike. I don't know what they're called. I like to do the legs, elliptical. I like to do the treadmill, and then I like to do the rower, and then the arm bike.
Well, it's tricky. I mean, I feel some sympathy for people who are just starting out in, they finally want to get serious about their conditioning, and there's so many different conflicting paradigms out there. There's a CrossFit people telling them one thing,
look at
the powerlifting people, the runners.
You can mix it too. I mean, here's another thing you can do. You go to the gym, and every 45 seconds to a minute you change it. So you do an exercise you do a 45-minute class, but you do a different exercise every minute. As soon as the whistle blows, boom, you're on another piece of equipment. Start out with like a half hour. So I do antagonistics. I'll go bench, or I'll do dips, then I'll do pull downs, then I'll do rollouts for my stomach, and then I'll do bridges, and then I'll do the TRX, the push-ups, and then I'll go to the pull-ups right after that. Then I go squats.
You're working the opposite sides of the opposite muscles, your biceps versus your triceps, your pecs.
If you want to blow your lungs out, you go legs and then your chest, like your quads and then your back, and then you do your hamstrings and then your chest. So you go up and down and up and down.
Okay. I'll have to give that a try. I mean, I've always just thought that, a lot of guys will sit there and they'll agonize about what kind of conditioning to do, and, worrying about,
I think
doing something is better than doing nothing.
Just show up at the gym and just jump on a piece of equipment and start lifting, and superset everything. You got to superset everything.
Okay. To change gears here, you teach a ton of seminars. Now, I think I know what your answer is going to be, and I think I know what my answer would be. But what about the naysayers who say that, man, you can't learn anything at a seminar?
I call bullshit. I've got a lot of really, really super good guys who came from seminars. Dan Inosanto's got a lot of his top instructors all over the world that came from seminars. So I guys saying they don't. I teach 6 months worth of knowledge on one seminar.
I will vouch for that. I completely agree. Meaning that if they take what you've taught them and work it for 6 months, they've got 6 months of material to work on.
Yeah. Yes. That's it.
So then, another question you run into sometimes, is it possible to learn to grapple without coaches? There's people who live hours drive away from the nearest gym.
Yeah, there is. Get DVDs, learn how to roll around, learn how to share knowledge with your friends, and then just get on the mat and grapple, and then watch. I have a guy that came into my gym. He'd only been training. He wrestled at Rio Hondo, and he came into my gym, and he was super good at all the submissions and stuff. And I go, "Wow, you do a lot of, all the stuff I'm talking about." And I'm telling him stuff, and he doesn't. And I go, "How did you get that?" He goes, "I've got all your tapes. I've been studying in my garage for about 4 years. I just have friends that come over. We watch your videos or DVDs, and then we get in the garage and we wrestle, and then we roll, and then we go over a lot of the techniques." And I said, "Well, drilling and sparring are the 2 biggest ways to get better. The second way is by drilling and competing. Those are the 2. So if you don't compete, if you grapple daily and you drill daily, that will help you get better."
What do you think the ratio of drilling to sparring should be?
Well,
for most people,
a lot of guys come in and they just want to roll. which makes you tough, and that's important. Makes you do things, but if you slow the game down and you just drill a little more and just go through things, then it warms you up and it trains the body to remember and then go through stuff. I think you have to. I found that instead of just jumping on the mat and rolling, if I get a good 20-minute to 30-minute warm-up with some techniques and going through some stuff, I have a lot better roll, and I can roll a lot longer because my lungs are open than just jumping on the mat and just going for it.
Any advice for getting the most out of a seminar as opposed to just going and it maybe getting intimidated a little bit by the amount of material that's shown? If you're going to a seminar where the guy's showing a lot of material as opposed to 2 moves, which I've also been to.
Yeah, I've been to both.
You?
I take other people's seminars too because I like to see the way other people teach or how not to teach. I like to see when people go, wow, that was really good. I like to be inspired and learn and to see how other people try to pass on knowledge too. I think you have to teach like a set of techniques, and then you have to go back over and you have to review. And then everything has to make sense. So like if I teach a leg lock and then I teach a neck crank and then I teach another leg lock and then I teach an arm lock and it doesn't make sense. So organization, like sister brother moves, families, sequences are a lot easier to teach for people because it's a lot easier to remember. This is sequence 1, sequence 2, sequence 3. I think it's easier to remember things that way. And it also teaches you where to go, what the next move is if the other one doesn't work. How do you gain things off the seminar? Have a few questions that you want to ask. Just write them down and walk in, kind of go through it and have when you go to a seminar, you'll never remember everything, but you'll remember what you're supposed to remember. Because I think you'll get a few things out of there that you'll go, hey, I really like these 3. I don't like all 5, but I like these 2 things, so I'm going to keep these 2.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last 3 questions. First of all, who's the most complete grappler you've ever trained with or trained under?
Oh, boy.
Are you going to make some enemies by answering this?
Yeah.
Okay, who are some of the most, who's the group of the most complete grapplers?
Obviously Higgin Machado. Obviously Hickson Gracie. Hoyce, Horian. Rico Ciparelli was really good. He had a lot of stuff. He has submissions now too and good at ground and pound. His positioning was spectacular. I wrestled with Randy before he ever fought. Randy was tough.
Randy Couture.
Yeah.
He was the toughest.
Vladimir Matyshenko. Just strong, hard to catch. Henderson was tough, very super strong, super freak, human strength. Ken Shamrock was really good, strong, good at submissions, tough. Guy Metzger was really good at defending and getting taken down. He had probably one of the best defenses of all the guys that I trained in the past. Of all the guys, his tackle defense was spectacular. Complete grapplers. Javi Vasquez is really good because of his ability to wrestle and do jiu-jitsu. Oh, Yuri Nakamura, obviously. Yuri Nakamura was very complete with striking, throwing. So he was probably the most complete because of his takedowns and submissions and striking. Larry Hartzell, Dan Inosanto, Gene LaBelle. As far as knowledge on grappling and throwing and submissions, Gokor, Gene LaBelle, Billy Robinson, Josh Barnett. That's enough, I think.
Okay. Okay. Next question. We've seen MMA evolve, right? I mean, you saw it evolve from even no striking on the ground to striking. We saw the invasion of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the incorporation of wrestling and takedown defense and ground and pound. Any guess as to what the next evolution of MMA is going to be in the next few years, next 10 years maybe?
Yeah, it's doing full circles. I'll tell you, it's funny because everyone learned Leglocks nobody knew Leglocks, and everyone learned Leglocks, and then everyone forgot about Leglocks again because they're worried about all the different DARS sequences. And so if you're going to fight, learn a few Leglocks, get really good at them, and use those immediately because most people aren't doing those right now. Striking, a lot of guys are really working on their striking. They're getting smart. They're bringing boxing coaches in. They brought Rob Kamen in. Rob was my sparring partner. And guys got smart and started bringing him in. And then now they're bringing in, GSP brought in Freddie Roach in boxing. So, these guys are smart. You get the best of the best, bring the best in, and modify it. That's it.
Okay.
Where do I see it going? I just see guys getting a lot better at striking and probably better at submissions.
Okay. Last question. What goals do you have left? I mean, you've done super well in fighting at the years. You've produced a ton of great fighters. You've been a huge part of people getting ready for not only MMA competition, but also submission grappling competition and even Brazilian jiu-jitsu competition. What are your goals for the near future and for the next couple of years?
I have a bunch of projects I'm working on. I'm working on some books to finish up. I have a ton of new instructionals that I want to get out there that aren't out there right now. I also would like to possibly compete again. I don't know if I'll fight, but people don't want to watch old guys fight. But at least I'll get in the shape of a fighter and have a choice. Let's see. We'll see with the guys. I was training Javi Vasquez, James Wilkes, and then I got our guys, Craig Wilkerson, Ben Jones, and a bunch of other guys, along with Josh Barnett and Brock. And we'll see what happens with their fights coming up. I've sacrificed a lot of my time to help these guys do really well, so I'll try to put as much time in with those guys as I can. But I'm going to really start focusing on myself coming up with my health. I'm traveling a lot. I'm booked solid till next year, so I'm going to.
How many seminars are you doing this coming year? Do you know?
I think I'm booked every weekend.
Okay.
That's what I was told, that I don't have a weekend off till the end of the year.
Okay.
So,
which people should know about. They should go to erikpaulson.com, Erik with a K.
I'm traveling all over. I'm traveling all over the United States, and I'm doing a lot more in Europe this year. I've got a really good group of guys in Europe that I haven't really seen too much of. So this last year, being busy, so I'm planning on going over there and really tightening up my organization with guys and teach them how to train their fighters. And I got a lot of guys now that I've trained for years that are all black belts under some jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu head. So, I've got probably 15 guys that are black belts, so that means I have been doing it for a long time. They got their black belts under whoever, Hickson, Pedro, Sauer, Marco Suarez, Mauricio Gomez, Higgin Machado, Carlos, you name it. So, Hoyce. So I've been around for a long time, and I'd like to tighten things up. And then I'm also going to do an Erik Paulson Invitational, which is going to be an open CSW submission wrestling tournament here at, I think, Cal State Fullerton. That's my next project.
Well, people should go to erikpaulson.com because I think your seminar schedule is all there, or schedule for the American pronunciation, schedule for the Canadian. And also all your DVDs, information about the camps that you host, and
the camps turn out really good. I try to bring a lot of good guys in every year, and I try to change it every year too.
And it's not just for pro fighters.
No, not at all. It's actually not. I would rather not have pro fighters there, because if they do come, they can train with our pros in the morning. But the guys who really want to learn usually aren't the ones that are fighting, because they don't have money. Most of the guys that fight don't have money to spend on training. They
spend it on other things. So the guys that are more interested as like as a hobby, or those are the type of people that usually spend more money on learning, because they're more intrigued and they don't just learn from watching fights on TV.
Mm-hmm. And they might be wanting to have material to teach to their own students. So.
Exactly. The teacher teach teachers and teach the kids, because they're the next generation.
Well, on that note, Erik, I think we'll sign off. Thank you so much. I think you've shared a ton of great information. I'm sorry to the people who put in questions that we didn't get to. Like I said, get to a seminar.
We'll have to do another interview.
We'll do Erik Paulson Part 2.
Thanks.
All right. Have a good night, Erik.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
In addition to these podcasts, I also put out a regular newsletter on training. It's very, very jiu-jitsu centered. It's a ton of in-depth information about different aspects, different techniques, different tricks, different tactics, different training methods around jiu-jitsu, ground fighting, no-gi grappling, and even MMA a little bit. So if you go to grapplearts.com/newsletter, you can sign up for free. If you don't like what you get, there's an unsubscribe button at the bottom of every single email you're ever going to get. We'll part as friends, no harm done, you tried it out. But I get a lot of feedback from people saying that they found these emails super useful in their training, even a little bit inspirational. So go to grapplearts.com/newsletter and try it out. It's completely free. It always will be. There's no obligation. It's really easy to leave if you don't like what I give you, all right? Check it out. Take care. Good luck with your training.